All right, welcome everyone. I think we've got a great agenda to work through today. Courtney, I can let you either do a roll call or confirm that we have quorum to get started, and we can move through our meeting minutes and get going.
Okay, I'll just run through roll real quick. Vaughn Jones is not with us. Amy Moyer.
Here.
Amy. John Ring. I saw you there, John.
Thanks.
Commissioner Jody Shattuck McNally is not here. Brett Wilk.
Hello.
Hi, Brett. Esther Duke.
Yep, here.
Hi, Esther. And Commissioner Veronica Medina.
Good morning or good afternoon. Hello.
Yeah, welcome, Commissioner. So we do have quorum.
Have a quorum. Great. Well, I think we have the October 20th meeting minutes to approve. If somebody can make a motion to move the acceptance of those minutes.
So moved.
In a second.
Second, sure.
All right. We have a motion to approve the minutes and a second. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed. That motion carries. Next on the agenda, I wanted to talk a little bit about our efforts with the Colorado Forest Resilience Planning Guide. So at long last, we've worked with Lynn Elliott, who's on the Forest Health Council, and her team to help us design a one-pager that will be more effective for a quick glance at what this one-pager is, and ideally help us with our outreach with local elected officials, leaders of towns and municipalities, where we want to make some movement on accessing and using the guide. So let me see if I can share my screen. Let's see, share this window. Here is the one pager. You guys are seeing it now. I can zoom in, but I think, Courtney, the recommendation was to have this committee approve the one pager for use by the full Forest Health Council. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so you'll see we added the QR code from our last meeting. We made some additional references to the Colorado Forest Health Council. We updated links, and we made some final language edits to ensure that for both clarity and to make sure that there's a good articulation of who this guidebook can be used by. Brett, anything else you want to add? I know you were very involved in this document creation and some of the last edits, but happy to answer any questions. Brett, let you speak a bit, and then we can entertain a motion to adopt this one pager as part of our advertising materials.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. There was myself, Amy, Katie helped before she went on leave, and Jaska, maybe some other folks have been involved. Yeah, I think the audience for this is practitioners on the ground, but also was trying to be a lot more geared towards elected officials, program leaders, agency leadership, folks like that. Just that was sort of the goal.
Okay, well, I will make a motion to approve this one pager. Can I have a second or any other questions before we do that?
I second.
Okay, all those in favor of approving the one pager, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. Well, thank you. I personally am glad we got this across the finish line before Katie comes back from her family leave. So thank you to everyone who worked on this. And I think it's a good segue into making sure that we get this one pager out in the hands of local elected folks. I think this has more been discussed at the legislative committee, but there's the January 29th legislative breakfast. Allison or Courtney, you all may have more information on that to share, or any of you all who also participate on the legislative committee, but wanted to discuss, one, how this committee could be effective during that breakfast and make sure we have these one-pagers available, and maybe have one of our members be there to give a quick pitch into this guide, and also potentially have this available and as part of the DNR SMART Act hearing. So Courtney or Allison, if you either of you have any more details or thoughts on the local elected outreach, or how this committee can take a supporting role with DNR, would love to hear some of your thoughts, and certainly others jump in as well.
Yes, I'm happy to share. The committee, the legislative committee, has some really great ideas about what materials to have available during the breakfast, and the guide is absolutely one of like the gold, like pieces of gold that the council has produced. So they were thinking about putting together a single page, I think, like a piece of paper that has the vision on one side and maybe the one pager on the other side, and it would be one of the main talking points. So I think it would be really great if someone from the committee could be there, because I know you all have really the most information on what the guide is for, how it can be used. And so even like to let the other council members who are in attendance know, so they can hear your languaging, I think that would be really helpful also. Allison, what do you think?
Yeah, that, and I was just going to add that we were talking about having just a few like larger posters behind our table displays. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like yet with tables, but one of them would be one of the already printed out vision posters we have, and another would be a call out of some sort to the Forest Resilience Planning Guide. So I don't know if that's a blow up. We haven't discussed exactly what that looks like, but it would be then also highlighted behind us all or on the table, wherever it is. But yeah, I'm really grateful that one pager looks great.
And then Allison, for the SMART Act hearing, is this something that you'll plan to incorporate in DNR's presentation as you discuss with that committee or the joint committee?
Yeah, as slides get put together and I put something together about Forest Health Council, we'll definitely include it on there. But that won't come probably middle to the end of December, as far as putting together content.
Oh, right. Because the SMART Act hearing is that scheduled in January?
Yeah, it should be January, but yeah, we'll be pre-planning since of course we have the holidays in between.
Okay. Well, let us know what you need from this committee or folks involved with the planning guide to help support that, or any materials for the legislative breakfast. Does anyone know already if they can attend on January 29th? Otherwise, we can put this as a action item. So Commissioner Medina and Brett, you'll be there.
Yeah, I'm tentatively planning to be there.
Great.
Would be happy to talk more about the guide. I think there's lots of opportunities we've mentioned it before, of connecting more of the legislative committee. And I wonder if there's even I know there's some overlap of folks on both committees, but like just a presentation or a discussion about the guide and how we could use the guide to inform legislative and developing legislation around concepts of how do you design programs and allocate funding to meet the needs of Colorado.
Brett, I think you would be a great person to have represent the committee at the legislative breakfast and talk about this. And I also think it could be a great idea to have a couple folks join the legislative committee and recommend that this is on their agenda, so that it's at the forefront of their mind as they make and consider legislative recommendations, and certainly bring forward any that come to mind. And I don't know, that was the next item I wanted to flag for this committee was whether there are any items that we want to consider either bringing to the legislative committee or bringing to the Forest Health Council that one furthers the outreach on this guidebook, but also some of the policy principles that are incorporated within it. Brett, is there anything you want to expand there? And it's certainly a topic we can continue to keep on our agenda here.
I don't know how much more to talk about it now. I think like I said, the goal of the one pager, and I think it's great, and I think I'm looking forward to keep doing more. Yeah. For many people, the Forest Resilience Planning Guide has been viewed for, oh, communities on the ground, now you can use this and know how to do stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. I think the biggest value in this guide is for, again, elected officials, program leaders, agency leaders, and I include myself in that as an organizational leader. How do we allocate our resources, financial and technical, to meet the best needs of getting the best work done on the ground? As an organizational leader, as an elected official, you're always looking for that framework. To me, the guide is that framework, right? Here's all the things that need to happen. We laid out the relative efforts of different activities, skills needed. So I think communicating that better and more directly to these kind of people is how I see the guide and this engagement moving forward.
Yeah.
And I think that's where there's room to develop policy around that, right? If this is a framework for making our programs more efficient and effective, I don't know what it is, but I feel like there could be some kind of policy around that, right?
I thought, Aaron, you put your camera on for just a second, but I did have just one thought as you were talking, Brett, is, how to better institutionalize the planning guide into some of the Colorado State Forest Service or DNR funding programs, that it's, a recommended element that communities demonstrate how they're incorporating those principles into their application. Or, there's a lot of ways that you could structure just making sure that the guide doesn't live only on one web page, but that it's a resource that's encouraged for numerous or appropriate funding programs as well.
Well, and I think that's the flip side, Amy, of not just requiring communities to articulate how they're meeting it, but having the program managers, oh, maybe I should relook at my language. Should I allow this activity to be funded within my program, within the rules? All funding programs have their own rules and strings attached, right? We can't just fund whatever out of every pot. Or do I narrow my funding pot because I really want to focus on this one thing that is a bigger need, right? It's not always about expanding. So yeah, I think both.
Well, how about this, Brett? I can reach out to Commissioner Shattuck McNally to link up with the agendas of the legislative committee and see if we either develop a joint session or join one of their sessions. I think they meet a little more frequently than this committee to at least present on the guidebook. I know a lot of folks have heard it, and good timing with.
She just joined, yeah, Commissioner.
Hi, Jody. We're just talking about the legislative committee and potentially following up with you to add an agenda item.
And what were you, sorry, I just got out of a meeting. I've been talking federal and state policy for 5 days straight.
No, we'll follow up with you. We're talking about the Forest Resilience Planning Guide. So we just approved our one pager, and one of the recommendations is how do we continue to get the most life out of that document and make sure that it gets used by communities and local elected officials, planning agencies, forest health practitioners. So we're looking at strategies to make sure we get the word out. How do we institutionalize it in some of our state programming efforts? And one of the ideas was to link up and potentially have this as an agenda item at a future legislative committee discussion, both to make sure that the committee members there are fully aware of the planning guide and its use, but also just start formulate some ideas that could be generated from both committees of what policy recommendations within that guidebook would be appropriate to potentially elevate as Forest Health Council recommendations or be embedded in other legislative items or arenas.
I certainly, and I apologize again, everybody being late. I had, just another meeting. I had to finish the discussion. I had a meeting with the governor's office and the insurance commissioner's office on Friday. And then all weekend, and yesterday down in Denver meeting with some pretty big mover and shakers for brunch. But I'm just curious. This definitely think is a great idea to put the legislative committee. I would see and remind me, I'm having trouble getting my brain to switch gears right now because I just got done talking emergency medical services system. So I'm wondering, is there created a toolbox like for someone who is not on this committee? Is there a toolbox with the talking points and everything in one file or one little spot so they can take it and they feel like they can go prepared and they don't have to, it's not a heavy lift to take this out to do it. And then also I certainly think when we have this breakfast coming up at the 29th at the Capitol, I don't know if that was brought up.
Yeah.
This might be a really good opportunity to highlight it and also have, we talk about those QR codes, because I do think a lot of this paper, legislators, we can print things all night and day, but they'll go on their desk and staff might file it. So I think the QR codes and put them on their phones, like they have it, they scan it, then they can save it on their phones. It would be something they can find quickly. And then of course they'll have hard copies. I think that would be really important. And then the other idea I had was there's the CCAT, we just had our CCAT, our counties and commissioners acting together retreat, but we also have the CCI retreat coming up. And, I can, if you can get this to me and I can print it out, and I know Commissioner Medina would be there, but I feel like we need to have a big button saying, hey, I'm on the Forest Health Council. Have you heard about our Vision 2050 and the resiliency guide? Ask me, right? And so I think do you know what I'm saying, Commissioner Medina? So, that would be a chance for us to we could put this out at one of the evenings and put maybe these out on a table with the CCAT or the CCI things and at least commissioners, we can hand them out, Commissioner Medina and I can maybe both have a pile and we can maybe coordinate. I don't know if we can coordinate, since that would be for information and not really talking about policy. I wonder if we could just call and talk to each other and coordinate to say how we could walk around with some of these in our bags or talk with people and try at least, there's 64 counties, we could at least divide them in half and try to talk to one person from each of those counties, especially priority counties, up kind of the about range. So I don't know, that's just some ideas I have. At least then we have commissioners who are aware of it. And that should be fairly attended. I think pretty much 90% of all counties come, at least one commissioner. So I think it's an opportunity to have them all in one spot and share that information, or even if you make a QR code, we could tape it on the wall. Hey, learn about the Forest Resiliency Guide. Here's a QR code and here's the 2050 vision, and people could at least scan that. Something like that. I just think it's an opportunity.
Well, I think we can get you all of that. So this is a good little bit of a recap before we move on, is that yes, we'll have the one pager. It has a QR code that we added, and I think we can send you the separate QR code if you wanted to print it bigger for folks. But yes, we have the one pager, we have a 4-page summary. So I think the talking points and toolbox is ready to go for you all and other members of the Forest Health Council. So we'll have it certainly ready for the January 29th legislative breakfast. We'll have both Commissioner Medina and Brett there, who can represent both this committee and the guidebook. It'll also be incorporated into DNR Smart Act hearing as part of the Forest Health Council priorities and actions. So yes, let's get you those materials. I think the CCI and CCAT are great inputs, and then there's probably a lot of other conferences,
Yeah. And
opportunities.
count me there because, I'm going to be there because the legislative breakfast kind of came out of legislative committee, or the breakfast came out of the legislative committee. And I've been on this committee since day one, so certainly want to represent this committee as well as an active member. And so I think when we have large groups like that, the more the merrier. And I knew there was a toolkit. I just need you to remind me because I just got done reading through a 20 separate documents in my toolkit to fly off to DC tomorrow to talk about things at the National Association of Counties with the White House and some members of Congress. So, and there are some things about wildfire and rural issues. So so I know that I just have to remind which one has a toolbox again, because I have a lot of toolboxes right now to juggle.
Yeah, there's so much to juggle, and I know we appreciate just all of the work and how well you represent the committee and council. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And yeah, so we'll follow up with you specifically on the legislative committee and with some of the materials. And we'll continue this discussion, I think, as a committee of opportunities to bring forward some of the policy recommendations from the guidebook and continue to look for ways that it can be institutionalized into state policies and programming.
And if I might, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the CCI conference, because I'm gone with DC this week, which is pretty much the big chunk of my middle of my week. And then next week's Thanksgiving, and then it's the CCI conference. So it may not be enough time for you to get all that together, but if at least we had the 1 or 4 pager or the QR code to send people to that, we can at least, have it. I could have it on my have a print out something that I could say, hey, have you heard about this? Scan this. This would be good information. Let me know if you have questions. And that might be even quicker. Oh, you're attending which one are you attending, Brett? I'll make sure I'm there.
I'm not attending. I was just saying, let me know if there's an opportunity to attend for a portion or something. I don't know exactly how that conference works. So maybe we can connect on that. And then I think I wanted to share also, I'm meeting with the State Forest Service communications team tomorrow about updating the website and making it more accessible on the website and developing more, I think, of this toolbox and something more than just a link to a 100-page PDF, which is not demon.
Well, it's in Westminster, and you're more than welcome to walk around with me.
Okay.
Have a kind of advocate and be, if you want to. Wednesday, we're usually on the way out. I won't be there Wednesday morning. I have to leave a little early, but usually Tuesday, Monday afternoon, Tuesday is a big block of time to be there. So, I can, you're welcome to try to come around. If you want to walk around and talk with folks, there'll be plenty of people hanging out in the hallways constantly. And I can talk to Kelly Flanagan and say, hey, we've invited Brett just kind of come to support Commissioner Medina and I. So let me know. You can, you have my email stuff. Just let me know if you're interested in doing that. I'll try to facilitate that.
Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Medina.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, since I'm president for I think it's the Western Slope for CCI, I could actually put Brent on my agenda and he could come around. Jody, how we do the breakout and everybody goes to their own district. We could maybe talk to Kelly and see if we could get Brett just into those, because that would give the opportunity to speak to everybody. Or even if it's just my district and your district, and then that way at least we can hit some of the main ones.
Yeah, would you copy me on that email, Commissioner Medina? And I think that's a great suggestion, because that would you would have only 4 meetings and you wouldn't have to go try to tackle down all 64. So that's a great suggestion. And then you could even just, say 5 minutes or something. And those are usually, those are more on Wednesday morning. So, so that would narrow it down. And, but hopefully she can let them have at the beginning of the meeting quick, so that, because they'll have to go all 4 at happen at the same time. So we'll have to jump around. So
Right.
It's open to that. Let's strategize together. That's
all right. Sounds good. Brett, I don't think I have your email address, but maybe you can put it in the chat and then I can make sure and add you on that when I email Kelly at CCI. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, well, I will follow up with all of the QR code and materials. Brett, I'll let you coordinate with Commissioner Medina and Commissioner Jody Shattuck McNally on the CCI. That would be great. And then Allison, you'll let us know if you need any support for both SMART Act and the legislative breakfast. Well, great. That's helpful. And I'll follow up with you, Commissioner Shattuck McNally, on the legislative committee as well.
And one other point real quick is this fall winter conference for CCI also has administrative staff and other staff members going to be there that have their conferences at the same time. And so there are other county managers, administrators, other folks too, that if you're walking around, you might be surprised who you could connect with. So just another positive. It's not just commissioners, but
Yeah.
they have their own separate side conferences in the same building. And sometimes we have the same meetings and dinners together. So a lot of people at one time in one place.
Yeah, that's great. Good timing. Well, I know our last meeting, we didn't have a full amount of time for John and Ben and Esther and others to give us a really good update on the Colorado Forest Collaboratives Network Summit. I sent around the slide deck as part of the meeting materials for this meeting with those slides. And I know, John, you are preparing some additional summaries if those aren't already live for folks. But I wanted to make sure we could revisit especially the Getting Creative with Funding session. And so I asked Esther if she could kind of start again with a quick synopsis of where that session left, especially with the overlap with the work partnership. So I know we've talked about this partnership with this committee for the last couple meetings. We sent around their one-pager. So we also have Ben here as well to kind of give us an update on the connection with that panel and really keep at the forefront how we incorporate those ideas within our own deliberations and stay connected with the work partnership. So John, if there's anything you want to start with in terms of the summaries from the Network Summit, certainly feel free. And then Esther, I'll let you kind of jump in with the slides that you're sharing as well. I think you're on mute, John. There you go. You might try Control D. Sometimes that will help you with your mic.
Do you guys, I can jump in while John's trying to get his audio. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, so, and oh, it looks like John's leaving, maybe leaving and coming back. And Ben, are you on as well?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. So yeah, I can talk through a little bit of this. Our key takeaways. We didn't actually share with you all of the breakouts. We had additional breakouts, but we kind of highlighted some that we thought had particularly pertinent takeaways for this committee. And so the first of those was the statewide public funding table topic. And are you guys seeing the slide?
It says loading again.
Yeah.
That's, yeah, that was the same last time.
Oh, it's not coming through.
No, loading. Maybe.
There we go.
Yeah.
There it is.
You see it this way?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess the full screen version doesn't work. That's okay. So yeah, so one of the things that we had talked about was, just kind of overall, what kind of gap are we trying to fill, or, what is the need? And so we framed this, basically all of these table topic breakouts were framed around this estimated statewide need across all funding sources of 200 million a year for the next 30 to 50 years. And you know, we talked in the statewide funding breakout about the existing grant programs really remaining super important, but that there is over 2 times the demand versus the funding available statewide. And there was, you know, discussion about a model like Restore could possibly be expanded to include more forest and wildfire kind of work. And Ben, did you want to elaborate on this one, since you've done additional work in this space too?
And yeah, I think that what's interesting to have framed the discussion starting with the need is to level set a little bit, because there is in some corners of that system people that still believe that small interventions could be enough. And I mean by that, you know, voluntary contributions by companies. And that may have been true, you know, 50 years ago, way past what companies can do. So that was like, you know, first, I think, good outcome is to bring everybody back to reality, the scale of what we're facing. It's just not small contributions here and there. That's still important. We're going to be talking about that, but that's important. People to realize the scale of it, and that's where it connects with work, and the work that we've done there is the you know, the reality of the state budget today, the reality of what's palatable or not. So there is interest in that statewide public funding, especially because that's the only way to bring some form of equity among counties, and a lot easier to raise money for wildfire mitigation in Boulder County than it is in some of the much more rural counties. So I think overall, we'll realize the scale of the issue, why public state funding will be needed at the state level, but also we'll work with the Trust for Public Land and other organizations have shown that right now it will be very challenging to achieve. Not giving up on it, maybe, you know, it will be on the ballot in 2026, but it's challenging right now.
Did folks have questions or want additional information specific to this breakout conversation?
I have one question on some of what Ben was just talking about, that, you know, ideally from an equity standpoint, statewide funding would be preferable, yet I think we see ballot initiatives be more successful on the local level, obviously, especially with taxing. So I was just curious if the breakout group wrestled with that a bit as part of this conversation.
Not the breakout, the breakout group. It's more of a follow-on series of conversations that have been happening at within the work group, and in part because that intersects with the rec you know, strategy, and it feels like a single issue ballot right now on a statewide basis, unless it's for feeding kids, is just not, you know, gonna go through. So there is coalition building there, and different. I mean, there are already some language that was floated with the commission that's in charge of, you know, assessing whether something can be put on the ballot or not, and that was rejected. But there is already one group that's put something together in front of that commission for wildfires. So lines are moving, but it's so technical that it's almost beyond the scope of what that, you know, that breakout session could handle.
Yeah, it's a big question. John, did you want to add anything, and then Jody?
Yeah, Amy, thank you for having us here. I've worked through those technical difficulties. My apologies. One quick addition to what Ben was saying, he mentioned how industry can't make up this funding shortfall. And in my world, I also hear frequent suggestions that philanthropy can make it up, and philanthropy cannot make up the shortfalls either. Another thing that Esther, Ben, and others and I have talked about is the parallel to the statewide water planning, which just a few years ago faced that exact same challenge that you described. We know for the most part, as a general rule, statewide initiatives don't work. That's probably gotten a little bit worse or a lot worse with the current statewide funding challenges. That said, statewide water interests got together across ag, environment, cities, and utilities of just a few years ago and passed a statewide initiative to bring casino funding and taxes to the water plan. So we talked about the possibility of doing something akin to that, probably not the exact same thing, but as a model, the water community has maybe shown us a path forward on how to navigate even the statewide funding.
Yeah, and I would say the tension between, you know, the local versus statewide for ballot initiatives and taxes did come up in the discussion breakout on local funding at the summit, and it was more from the perspective of, like, we think that county or potentially special district, like, you know, if it's a forest improvement district or, you know, other special district kind of that are watershed or fireshed level is the right entry point for people. So that discussion did kind of play out at the summit with people saying that folks are generally more supportive the more local it is, and like even extending to a forest improvement district and saying like my taxes are going to support this work in the next county over, like takes some real work, but maybe is worthwhile work. But like going much broader than that, I think the folks working at the very local level, which is, you know, the majority of our summit participants, really thought that it's challenging to ask people to fund outside of local.
Thanks for sharing those perspectives. I know that we've had a lot of conversation, and full disclosure, we're looking at certainly a ballot measure coming up here. I've been working on for 3 years, and we've had a lot of conversations because this forest improvement district has come up, and there's the commissioner has been, even Friday brought this up, and you can see all of us stand up because, you know, Boulder and others have worked on things, and adding another taxing entity into a county when I already have over 100 taxing entities in our county, and there's administrative costs, and we looked at the statute and you have such a large wheelie board with what's in statute right now. And also there wasn't a lot of county representation. And when it comes to, like, I don't know if you all saw that the FEMA director just resigned today. And so that's going to create even more uncertainty into the system. Is, you know, people are wanting more local solutions and having more nimbleness and control over the funding, because I've heard from some of the folks who have been concerned about some of a statewide measure just because they're thinking, well, will this, you know, how much competition, if there's not enough to go around, are they able to collect? And then what happens if one county really needs it and then they have a wildfire, and then they're shifting and now they're doing more restorative mode? And there's just a lot of questions. And I know a lot of people were very concerned having a multi-county thing, funding special district, because right now we look at how that works with the Attorney General's office and the region with the opioid abatement. And a lot, like our county is its own region. There's other counties we could have partnered with, but they didn't want to partner. And then not doing that as a negative, is just a fact, right? And they, as we have been working and getting money out the door, because we usually have to get a couple of $1 million out the door every year, and now it's going to be a less, our the from the Sun one's going to get smaller, and that means there's going to be more competition for those funds. But the counties, the regions that have more than one county and several municipalities, because municipalities are on our account with us, those counties have been harder to get information, to get moving and get money out the door in the process and getting them to agree. And it's just been kind of another layer of administrative things to work through, and it could be a great thing, but it also has its challenges. And so I just wanted to share a little bit of feedback I've been hearing from folks locally who worry about having an extra layer of folks not being able to move quick enough for the need. And we have our woody biomass, we have our water master plan, and we have our strategic plan and what we're looking at. And then we also been taking, we have the fire shed working here, we have the 2 watersheds, and we meet as a health part, a group as a partnership. And there's a lot of federal, state, and local leaders in that, and they're really focusing on sharing data and having priorities, because we know that the funding and working together and going for funding. And that's how we got those 2. I feel one of the reasons is we got that Gateway to the Rockies federal defense grant of 10 million again, is because we have worked together and shared the funding. So there's some successes looking that way. But I think when you get the regions too big, it can be cumbersome. And that's just kind of what I'm just sharing what I've been hearing and some of the concerns about a statewide versus regional versus local kind of discussion on funding. And obviously the Hunger Games from everyone having funding constraints is going to just get worse as the year goes on, because it's already been kind of a bumpy road with the federal shutdown and SNAP benefits. So just some perspectives, because I've been in a lot of meetings the last 3 weeks having this exact same conversation.
Yeah, it's interesting perspective, especially with 100 different taxing entities. Keep going, or go ahead, Esther and Ben. I'll just need to bring us back in about 10 minutes at 12:55.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I skipped to the local public funding. We can go back to the other 2 just because of where we've landed with this conversation. So some of the key takeaways from that conversation were, they talked about some examples of a variety of local public funding models that have been successful. And I think the report for the summit that is going to be shared out, released, I think today, maybe, I'm not sure. Yeah, John. Yeah, today has more details on sort of which ones were highlighted as being, some that folks considered successful models to look to. There was conversation about water funds and not really seeing that downstream water users paying for as beneficiaries as being that successful in Colorado. Although, folks did talk about forest to faucets and peaks to people, and kind of there is some opportunity there, but being realistic about how much that can offset the cost and the need. But there's no one silver bullet. So this is about figuring out where to use these different tools together. So Trust for Public Lands, I think you all are aware, is working on some new tools to help local communities explore public funding opportunities and develop those. And so that's something they're working on with the work group and building out. And there was the survey that was circulated that brought in some guidance to them on sort of where the most interest and need is. Ben, did you want to talk any more about that?
Specifically the work with TPL, or more generally
Yeah, either. I mean, I guess I can finish out the bullets. The Forest Improvement District is something that came up, and we also had a separate breakout on that one specifically. So Jody, you might be interested to look at the summary in the report that's coming out later today that really dived into what things folks liked about the forest improvement districts, and sort of, what are the different ways that we could think about bringing that into however we're moving forward. So I think there were some reasons that people wanted to think about beyond county, and those could be met either through state or more flexibility. I think the challenge is that sometimes the need don't align to where there's a tax base, or the like there are places we need to fund where the funding coming from that county or municipality is challenging, right?
And can you share with me that report coming out? Is that the Forest Collaborative driving that? Who's driving that report, and who's put in information? I've already been copied on emails where people from different commissions are talking to state legislators about the changes to that state statute that need to be changed to make sure it works for what they're trying to accomplish. But it doesn't seem to have in my experience, a full contingent of stakeholders. And so it seems to be moving really fast. And when I try to jump in on some of those conversations, it seems like I can't keep up. So I'm wondering who's driving the big picture, who's bringing all these stakeholders. Are you going to go ahead and try to get all these statutory changes made for next year to go ahead and pursue this? And are you planning to pursue this the minute that the bill is signed into law? And where are you going to bring all the other local governments in on the conversation? I'm just curious about that.
I think these are recommendations. Like, these are not anybody in this group driving the train. It's like taking, some of those more diverse perspectives that you're alluding to, Jody, and capturing that and summarizing it. And so that's been a group effort of those of us who organized the summit. So myself, Chaska Waiwaka, Audrey, Miles Cherney, John Sanderson, and the experts that Ben helped identify and bring in for these table topic facilitated discussions, and then everybody who participated in the summit. We just kind of summarized from the notes and elevated what we were hearing folks kind of coalesce around.
Great, I appreciate that, because I think it's really important to have all those perspectives from this whole state. And I think the Forest Collaboratives bring a unique perspective that from folks that across the state, in a very unique network. It's a really important voice to have. But I'm concerned about, I've already been looped into some conversations with state legislators to address what they think the changes need to be the state statute going forward. And it seems to be really accelerated and being expedited or expedited. And I'm just wondering if you were all at that table and what, who's kind of maybe bringing in all these perspectives. So I'm wondering how we jump into those talks and make sure all this great conversation from so many wonderful subject matter experts get to be part of that conversation. So I'm wondering about that.
Jody, could you, just to clarify for me, are we talking about changes in the Forest Improvement District's regulations? Is that specifically what's forward?
Yep. The statute for the Forest Improvement District says, I've already been looped in two emails and conversations where they're specifically saying what this needs to be changed so we can get this passed and get this done. And I was like, whoa. Can we talk about this? So, but it's already like in the hands of legislators. The specific bullet points of what needed to be improved, and it came out of the last 2 months of meetings and conversations. And so I'm just curious about that, because I think it'd be very important to make sure all of these groups, including yourselves and all of us, to be at least have some stakeholdering in that process to make sure we do this correctly. So
that's not something that work has been involved in, and we have a whole group meeting tomorrow. So I will ask the question, because yes, that is absolutely something that work should be involved in one form or the other. And so I'm surprised that that was never brought up at any of our recent meetings. So thank you, Jody.
I just think that I appreciate that. And I think sometimes great ideas start rolling, and I really want to make sure that you are all aware of that and how we can bring everyone to have eyes and ears on that, because I think it's very important to have those perspectives represented. Thanks for letting me opine on that.
Go ahead, Allison.
Yeah, thank you for all this. I just wanted to share that some discussion about forest improvement districts came out of the last Colorado Fire Commission meeting, the last quarterly meeting. Some of you may have been on there, and a request for a discussion between the Colorado Fire Commission and the Forest Health Council, about how this topic kind of overlaps in both of those spaces. So I am having a discussion tomorrow. It doesn't involve anything that you had just mentioned, Commissioner, though, as far as like discussions of bill and things like that. But I'm meeting with Katie Lobazinski tomorrow, who's the administrator for the Colorado Fire Commission, just to learn a little bit more, and then I'll share back what I learn as well.
That would be great. I have had a phone call and I've had this email from two different state senator and state rep that have been contacted and asked to run a bill and with these specific changes. And so I'm just trying to catch up. I'm like, whoa, is this happening? So I'm just
No,
curious.
I think that's great. And I hope, I mean, I tried to really condense the summary. So I think it's something you guys can all look at really quickly and kind of get a sense of what was discussed. And if you have follow-up questions, I mean, there are a lot more details in the notes. So I'm happy to follow up about any of the points that are made in that report and provide a little more context and detail.
Yeah, that's great, Esther. It sounds like this report will be really timely, especially Jody flagging this conversation that in and of itself can be a lens to really make sure everyone's thoughtful if we are going to propose opening up that portion of statute. And thank you, Allison, for the quick flag on the Colorado Fire Commission. It is nice to have these forums set up to convene and provide a diversity of perspectives on these types of issues. Go ahead, Ben.
Just very briefly, because that intersects the previous one, also intersects with the interest of the Colorado Forum. We were in Aspen last week for an annual meeting, and I organized a meeting with Aspen Fire, and they had two ballot measures that passed. We had the local wildfire collaborative, the Aspen Wildfire Foundation, who kind of presented the full scale of what could happen locally. And there was a lot of interest by the members of the Colorado Forum to actively support those type of solutions. But I think that they may be an interesting, way to get, maybe there's a lot of power there that could be harnessed for those topics. And one of the key questions that our group had was, what is the readiness scale for those communities? When is it worth us sending, a subgroup to a community to help them figure things out? And so that, that would be a conversation to be had with, the council, with COCO. But there was a lot of interest in supporting that strategy.
That's cool. We should talk more about that. Since I know we're tight on time, I feel like we pretty much already covered the pooled public private funding, just knowing that really the magnitude of the need does not align with private and corporate funding, but there are opportunities in other ways to it would be great for us to work more on our relationships with sort of private sector to be champions of doing this work. They do have lobbyists, they do have influence, especially the bigger employers in our state. If they're saying it's important for us to invest in forest health and wildfire resilience, that makes a difference beyond just the money that they're actually putting in. So even small contributions can be leveraged through the publicity around the fact that they think it's important, right? And so that's one of the things that has been discussed. Ben, did you want to add anything else?
We have only 4 minutes, so
Yeah.
let's.
So the revolving loan bridge financing conversation, that was with coalitions and collaboratives with our Forest and Water Renewal Fund team, and then Blue Forest with their Forest Resilience Bond. And this was really about the need for upfront bridge financing because all of this funding is reimbursement based, and that creates a bottleneck and is limiting how big of projects folks can go after and how quickly they can move on those projects successfully. And we had some really interesting conversations at that table with some pretty I guess challenging situations that leadership are put into in these place-based efforts. With, we had an executive director talking about how she couldn't get a loan for her organization unless she put up her own personal home as collateral, and she did because she believed in the work and she knew they had the funding, and she wanted to be able to move forward with a big project. But nobody should be put in that position, and I think this is a place where we could really make a difference, both through providing bridge financing and also really thinking about, can we as a state do better? I think we can. I'm providing some of that funding up front. California recently changed how they fund this kind of work, and they provide, I can't remember if it's 20 or 25% of the funding up front. So I think this is something that the Forest Health Council could help to build awareness and move the needle around, and coalitions and collaboratives would love to work with you all on that. Even after I stop being a proxy for Katie, I'd love to help tackle this because it's a very real problem that we run into a lot.
Maybe just very briefly to work to build on that. I think that's something that we need as a group to be aware of, is what in international development we would call the absorption capacity. Right now, if we were to plug $200 million onto our collaboratives, and we cannot absorb $200 million, and that the issue of the loan is one, but overall we just need to realize that it's not just an issue of money. We're going to have to rebuild or to help grow that capacity through the entire supply chain. Right now, we're not ready for $200 million.
Thank you, Ben. Yeah. So then high level, our main takeaways across all of our breakouts, which like I mentioned, there were a number of others that I didn't summarize here, but they are in the report, are that private funding sources are insufficient to meet the funding needs. Public funding sources are essential, likely as the majority funding source. Forest and wildfire issues are still mostly seen as local issues. We've been talking about that today, that although we need to figure out how do we fund across the state and more equitably, people are most interested in investing locally. And then we also had a takeaway that the summit, like most forest and fire events, is attended mostly by practitioners, and we need to figure out how to engage the private sector and elected officials more. And the idea of something like Water Congress, a statewide wildfire Congress, or at least initially having some kind of special session at Water Congress that's about wildfire resilience or something along those lines. And I think that's in closing, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Esther and Ben, for joining us again to walk through this. I'm glad we had more time to spend on this panel, and it's very timely, and I'm looking forward to sharing out the full summit summary when I think it's almost ready. So just like Jody said, it's going to be really helpful. I think just to wrap up, since we're 1 minute over our time, the next steps for this committee is really to deliberate on all of the presentations and perspective we've heard, really starting in March when we had the Restore program come and talk to this committee. We've had Colorado State Forest Service talk to us about their programming. We've got the Forest Resilience Planning Guide that has a lot of potential to pull forward ideas and platforms for other recommendations. we've connected with the work group, and we've spent time with our collaboratives network to really get feedback. So as I transition things back to Katie, when she gets back up and running, I think some of our conversations will be starting this forum to really lift recommendations that we might bring to either the legislative committee or the full Forest Health Council, and also be positioned to be helpful as some of the conversations, whether it's on the forest improvement districts or otherwise, that we can help be advocates and bring our perspective. So that's what's coming up next for this committee. I will need to connect with Katie. Our next meeting is scheduled for December 15th. I will be getting on a plane at that time. So if folks have initial reactions that they really want to take December off, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see if Katie's willing to jump back in that quickly.
I think it might be good to take a break. I know we all have super things, unless there's something on the calendar that is really pressing and need to be, it might be, I was always like in December, I'm like, hey, there's so many extra things that get added to the calendar for the holidays.
Yeah.
It might be nice to give everyone just a chance to have one less meeting, unless there's something really pressing. That's the only feedback I have. Thank you.
I think that's helpful feedback, and it could give Katie and I time to think about the pass off and really think about how we thoughtfully bring forward a lot of the recommendations that we've heard over the last 7 to 8 months. So more to come there. And I think with that, Courtney, we can adjourn the meeting, and I'll follow up with some of these action items that we discussed today.
Oh, you're muted.
There you go.
Was that a decision to cancel the December 15th meeting that I should do, or is that something you're gonna follow up about?
Let me follow up with
Okay.
Katie, and then we'll make sure to give people some notice before the 15th.
Then yes, I think you're good to adjourn.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you, Esther and Ben and John, for joining us again and for a really good discussion. And thank you, Commissioner Medina. We are always happy to have you. Please continue to join this committee. And if we don't see you guys in September or December, have a wonderful holiday season, and we'll catch up soon.
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks, everyone.